morning, glory, and evening grace, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. The weekend broadcast is underway, as it usually is, with John Ellis, founder and editor-in-chief of News Items, which you can find by Googling John Ellis and News Items. It's the only newsletter you really need in the morning. And the way John and I usually work Fridays is that John will send me a list of topics he thinks we ought to cover, and I'll get smart about them, and then we'll talk about them. Only today, great minds thinking alike. John's second item, which I bumped up to number one, is Canada, oh Canada. John, I'm so glad you brought this up because I listened to Mark Carney's speech at Davos, which got a standing ovation. Moderator said that's very rare at Davos, and it's because he's a banker talking to bankers, and it was really quietly but thoroughly anti-American. Have you had a chance to listen to that speech yet?
I have not. I read it, but I haven't listened to it.
What did you think about the? Well, let me give you the main clip, which is cut number 5.
The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, and the question for middle powers like Canada, argue the middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. Middle powers do not. What does it mean for middle powers to live the truth? When middle powers criticize economic intimidation, this is the task of the middle powers.
All right, so you get it, John. Canada's a middle power between hegemons. And I guess we're on the same scale with China. He mentioned the hegemons. I'm insulted by this. He just got back from China, the genocide of the Uyghurs, Jimmy Lai in prison, Taiwan threatened, Hong Kong crushed, and he's lecturing us because he doesn't like Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, I think that Carney came to power because of Donald Trump. The Conservative Party in Canada was leading the elections, the national elections, leading up to Election Day by 25 points, and then Trump was inaugurated, and there was talk of annexing Canada, and the tariffs were announced on Canadian products, and Carney vaulted to victory as a result. And so he replayed this card at Davos and made himself something of a hero amongst what he calls the middle powers.
Well, he made himself something of a pariah to me. A couple other things he said. One of my favorites, absolutely my favorite, cut number 6.
Our commitment to NATO's Article 5 is unwavering. So we're working with our NATO allies, including the Nordic-Baltic Gate, to further secure the alliance's northern and western flanks, including through Canada's unprecedented investments in over-the-horizon radar, in submarines, in aircraft, and boots on the ground.
John, I looked it up. They have 4 submarines, the most recent one of which was commissioned in 2013. The other 3 are 2003 and 2001. They spend less than 2% of their GDP on defense. They'll get to 2% by 2030. Compared with Poland and Finland, which are at 3.7 and 4.7% GDP, they do not carry their weight. And the reason that they're an energy superpower, another claim, is because of the freedom of the seas that we guarantee. Is it too much for Americans? I'm a multilateralist. I'm an international. I love NATO, but this is poking me in the eye, and I imagine it's got to make Trump really crazy.
Well, I think it makes Trump incredibly crazy, which, of course, is to Carney's at least short-term benefit. But all of the points you make are certainly valid. I mean, Canada, everybody, all of the so-called Western countries benefit from, the U.S. umbrella, if you want to call it that. And so if you're going to be critical of the U.S., I think you also have an obligation to be appreciative of all of the advantages that you get from being aligned with us.
Yeah, that's all I would. The thing that gets me the most in life, and I guess in international affairs, is ingratitude. And Canada is not a middle power. It is an annex to the United States that's sovereign, but depends upon it. Let's go to your other pieces because they make me happier. Let's talk about Wegovy in pill form because this is a giant breakthrough for America and the world's health.
Right. Though I think everybody's familiar with the weight loss drug Wegovy and the other ones. But the problem has been that you had to get Wegovy as an injectable, right? And as a result, it's much more expensive to manufacture. You have to put it in the refrigerator when you get it, all that stuff. It's now been approved in pill form. And although the price at the moment is the same, inevitably and invariably, the price of the pill will come down because the cost of manufacturing the pill is much, much less than doing the injectable. So we're going to have much wider distribution, much wider use of Wegovy, and as a result, we're going to have different menus, reduced calorie menus at restaurants. We're going to have reduced purchases at grocery stores. And my favorite piece was that the major airlines now project that because people will be weighing less, they'll save $580 million this year on fuel costs.
All right, think about the number of passengers who don't sit next to the plus size passenger that's sort of in their seat.
Right.
But do you think the United States ought to be encouraging people who are morbidly obese, certainly, but even those who are packing 50 or more pounds or 30 or more pounds to go investigate this, that it's good for them?
I think I mean, efficacy and safety obviously are the big concerns, but those concerns have been at least gotten the approval of the FDA. And, if you have high blood pressure, if you have diabetes, and if you're either obese or morbidly obese, this is a game changer. And it means for taxpayers, it means less cost on Medicare and all sorts of government-sponsored medical programs, healthcare programs. So it's a win in every which direction, except that it will have a major impact on the food business. And worldwide, the food business employs 50% of the world's population.
Wow.
I'm not saying that 50% grow carrots or whatever, but if you think about food, the growing of it, the fertilizing of it, the machinery to get it, out of the ground and blah, 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 all the way to restaurants and waiters and busboys and so on and so forth. That is 50% of the workforce of the world.
That's remarkable.
So if you have an impact, even a slight impact, on all those restaurants and all those grocery stores and all the farmers who have decided to grow different crops, the impact is enormous, and we're just at the outset of it.
Well, because of my rant about Canada, we're running low on time, and there are two very important pieces from news items that you sent me. Gen Xers and millennials are set to inherit $4.6 trillion from their elders, and OpenAI may be flaming out. In either order that you want to do, that last one was kind of a sock in the eye for people who are invested in AI.
Yeah, I mean, the OpenAI story is that OpenAI is spending vast amounts of money and taking in not very much revenue. And the question is whether that's sustainable. Will there be in 2027, 2028, 2029 enough revenue to justify the investments that they're making now in data centers, so on and so forth? There's a guy named Sebastian Mallaby wrote a book about venture capital and AI. And he wrote an influential piece, I think, in the Journal or the Times that said basically, I think OpenAI is going to run out of money. So that's a big question.
But millennials are not going to run out of money.
Well, this is the thing, okay? We got I mean, there's nothing more annoying than the affordability issue when it's raised by Gen Xers and millennials, okay? Because they're coming into $4.6 trillion. Is that right? 4.6?
Yep.
Yeah, $4.6 trillion, okay? Inheriting the most any generation ever in the history of mankind and all they're talking about is the price of, going out to dinner. I mean, come on, you're getting a lot of money here.
It's a massive wealth transfer over the next 10 years. And
Huge.
2.4 trillion of that is in property in the United States. So they'll get a stepped up basis. That's the amazing thing. There's a tax part to this that makes it an incredible windfall. But
Yeah,
John Ellis,
yeah.
a great bit of news items today. I want to remind everyone, Google news items and John Ellis. It's the best newsletter. I read it every morning. I usually post one or two of the 15 to 30 different bits of news that John finds by staying up all night and sleeping during the day. And I'm so glad you found the Canada thing. Thank you, John. On the weekend broadcast, Eli Lake joins us. He is, of course, the host of the Breaking History podcast, a contributor to the Free Press, an expert on Iran. Eli, in the Davos love-in among bankers, did anyone have the guts to stand up and say Iran just mowed down 15,000 of their people and imprisoned the same number and is the evilest regime on the planet?
It's a really good question. I don't think anybody kind of put it like that, and I think that's exactly how we should think about it. But that said, this is the end of the Obama delusion. I have not heard from European capitals that there is a sense or an expectation that there will be new negotiations with Iran over, whatever remains of its nuclear program, and eventually we will knit Iran into the global order by investing in that country as long as that regime stays in power. I think at this point, I hope the regime collapses tomorrow, but even if it doesn't, I just don't think that we're going to get back to what we lived through 10 years ago, which was the idea that there would be major corporations investing in Iran. The sanctions were lifted as Iran built up this proxy network throughout the region and continued to have the nuclear option.
They did not invite they ended up disinviting the foreign minister of Iran, which was a good move. But they have not designated the IRGC as a terrorist organization at the EU, which is a bad move. The most important question in the world right now, and I think by a lot, I've been on a Canada rant already today because the Mark Carney disgusting address was so cowardly and two-faced. But the most important question remains, should Donald Trump hit Iran hard, and will he? What do you think, Eli Lake?
I think he absolutely should. I don't see how, I mean, listen, nobody can predict what's going on with Donald Trump. His messaging has been pretty consistent, and I think he tried to kind of create his own way out by saying that they had they had canceled the execution of, I think he has a very specific number, 837 people in the hangings, which he's talked about. We saw today that one of the senior kind of judges in Iran said that is not true and that they would be going forward with the executions. Of course, the death toll is horrific. I think at the very least it's 4,000 or 5,000, and it could be upwards of 25,000 or more. They've turned off the internet precisely for this reason. So, I hope that this is the kind of final straw. And then more importantly, the response from Iran's leaders up into and including Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been effectively to taunt Trump, to question his resolve. That didn't go very well for Nicolas Maduro. It didn't go very well for Qasem Soleimani. And I think that they, in some ways, in that respect, they are sealing their fate. My worry is, though, that I would have liked to have seen something, and I understand military assets have to be in place. I also understand that, according to a lot of reporting, and I've heard this too in my reporting, that Trump really does want a comprehensive military option and to go big. So that maybe takes time, but it would have been good to have something 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, when he said help was on the way, because I think the perception is that there was at least a chance that Trump would back off and would seek some kind of deal. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's my
Let me go all Sophocles on you. You cannot know
Yeah.
how good the day has been until the night has come. And with Donald Trump, the whole Greenland thing, he's an actor. The whole Greenland thing might have been a way to divert attention away from this. But I did have a very smart national security fellow of impeccable credentials say, we can't hit Cargill and the oil terminals, which is what seems obvious to me. It's keeping the regime alive, because that would possibly bring China in to rebuild it and to embed within Iran. What do you think of that?
There's a lot of reasons maybe why you don't hit Karg Island. You could also cause an oil shock that would do terrible things to the price of energy, which has been relatively stable and low, and that would have an effect in terms of inflation. So Trump's got to consider that. I think he would have an enormous effect if he just decided to hit the headquarters and regional headquarters for the IRGC, that's the Revolutionary Guard Corps, and the Basiji militia, and then started similar to what Israel did, start targeting senior regime officials up to and including Ayatollah Khamenei. You have a number of voices from Iran's opposition, not just on the outside, that are begging the America to hit this supreme leader. What else is there left to talk about at this point? So there are a lot of targets in Iran short of Karg Island.
Well, the
And
reason I like
understand-
Karg Island is all that money goes to the IRGC.
Yeah.
Canada is ramping up its export of oil. It's at $60 a barrel. $70 a barrel is not that big of a deal, and it can be. We can overproduce. We are just about to hit full American production. But Eli, before I go, I got to ask you, the Carney speech and many of the other Europeans seem to take for granted that the United States will always protect them no matter what they say about us. It's a little bit of what Israel must have to deal with on a daily basis, that they are really the linchpin to security in the Middle East, but they get dumped on by everyone. And it's not pleasant.
I would say this, it's empty rhetoric. Canada and Europe do not have the military, do not have the means to protect themselves. That is by our design, and there are good reasons for that. So I want to just say, I don't want to give Trump a total pass. I think that some of the things that he said were outrageous, and the way that he went about the Greenland thing, I think can have, but it's not the end of the world because there is no alternative right now to the alliance with America. The meeting with Xi and I'm sorry, not even Xi, like the senior Chinese official, and the statement that, things are going in a different direction is absurd, and Carney ought to know better. The idea that Canada is going to pursue the kind of relationship it has with China over the United States, even under Trump, and I get, why he's nervous about things, but don't make threats, don't use that rhetoric, because it's just not realistic. It's not in the cards.
They're going to sell a lot of oil to China, which is fine because we have freedom of the seas guaranteed by the United States Navy. And if that ends, they can only sell it to us. And they don't even spend 2% of their GDP on defense, Eli. He talked about his submarines. They got 4 submarines, the most recent one, which was built in 2015.
But listen, I agree, and that some of this is exposing things. I mean, listen, some of what Trump is saying, even though I disagree with a lot of it, is true. When we were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, yes, it's true when they say the British did fight, especially on the special operations side, absolutely valiantly. That's
and
true.
The Canadians lost 158 people in Afghanistan.
Also true. But I'm just saying the Italians and the Germans, we couldn't trust them to secure areas. There are cultural issues there that are really deep. It's not just about spending more of your GDP. There's not the kind of military culture that we have in America right now. So those are deep things that our generations are going to be playing out over a generation. But let's be realistic. There is no alternative to American power. Europeans, Canada, they know that.
No matter how many times they go to Davos, I'm in the Kill Davos Forever Club. What do you think, Eli? 30 seconds.
I agree. Davos is a debating society of the plutocratic class.
It's a self-pleasuring of the banking class, and I'm sick of it. Thank you, Eli Lake. Follow him on X at Eli Lake. I'm joined by Matt Continetti, who is, of course, head of domestic policy studies at the the American Enterprise Institute. He's also the Canadian Wall Street Journal columnist, and he's just back from Canada. I was going to call him the Kim Philby of Canada, but I think Don McLean or Guy Burgess sounds more Canadian. Oh. What were you doing up north in the land of hockey and maple syrup?
Such slanders on my character, comparing me to those Cambridge spies. No, I was in Canada, engaged in high-stakes diplomacy, Hugh. I went to Toronto Wednesday evening, spent a whole 24 hours there with our northern neighbor, touched down in Ottawa briefly on my way back to D.C., and I can report the following. Canada is not happy with President Trump. and his rhetoric on Greenland or the 51st state. And so my job there was to explain what Trump is up to in shaping the world in order to create kind of the sinews, restore the sinews of Western civilization in preparation for the competition with China. I'd like to think I convinced a few of my Canadian friends, but it was tough going.
You need to sit down with Mark Carney. Have you listened to the Mark Carney address at Davos yet?
Oh, yes. That speech was the talk of the chattering class here in D.C. Almost as soon as it was delivered. And so, ever curious, I went and I looked it up. I watched the speech. And I have to say, I don't know what all the fuss was about, Hugh.
I think it's one of the most anti-American speeches because it's cowardly. He never mentions America or Donald Trump, but he talks about the hegemons, meaning that China and us are alike. And then he runs through, I'll just give you some of the highlights. Cut number 4.
So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals. And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition.
All right, Matt, a rupture. They are not protected from the world without us. They depend upon our nuclear umbrella, our military. They have 4 submarines, 68,000 soldiers. They spend less than 2% of their GDP on national defense. And the oil they send abroad is only because we maintain freedom of the seas. If we didn't, they'd have to sell it all to us. It was the most arrogant, two-faced thing I have heard from a world leader who depends upon America to the extent that Canada does. It really enraged me. So tell me why I'm wrong.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think there are 2 main problems with this speech that Prime Minister Carney gave. The first one is there was no action item. It was all rhetoric. It was all quotations from Thucydides and Václav Havel. But he never said what he was going to do except have this liberal pluralistic society that he oversees, he governs in Canada. But what does that mean? Is he actually going to spend more money on defense? Is he going to correct the wreckage that Justin Trudeau caused Canada through socialism and through the Green New Deal? The Canadian economy, America's opened up a tremendous gap in per capita GDP and productivity with Canada. Canada has real domestic issues that the United States did not cause. Canada caused them, and he needs to address those. And the second thing about the speech was, I thought it was really, really rich because he delivered a speech obviously directed toward President Trump. Less than a week after he met with Xi Jinping,
yes,
who does not believe in freedom, wants to set the rules of this new world order in a way that would disadvantage any country not named China. And Carney there was extremely solicitous, even slavish, towards Xi Jinping. And so if you're going to quote Václav Havel about speaking truth to power, why don't you do it to the Chinese communist dictator and instead of going up to the applause of Eurocrats in Davos, Switzerland?
Thank you. Because at that meeting with Xi Jinping, he said, we're entering into an alliance. And I thought, oh, the Uyghurs will love that. And I thought Jimmy Lai's in a prison cell. And I thought Taiwan is being threatened every day and that Hong Kong has been crushed. And he talks in this speech about the hegemons. It's clearly China and us. I don't really know how to absorb this other than he is of the, it's like Jacob Fry with submarines. He's of the banking class, and the banking class likes China because they do a lot of business with China. Am I too harsh?
You're right about the banking class and the financial elite, but I think there's another thing at work here, Hugh, and that is domestic Canadian politics.
True.
The thing about nationalism is every nation has it. And so we have American nationalism through President Trump, but he's awakened nationalism in India and in China, traditionally allies of ours. And so Carney was playing to a domestic audience as well. And I can report they liked it.
It's working. When we come back, I'm talking with Matt during the break about the new superstar of American repartee, Scott Bessent. And then when we come back on the other side, Jack Smith. I'm back with Matt Continetti to play for Matt 2 pieces of Scott Bessent in Davos, if you may have missed it. First of all, Here's Scott Bessent talking about Gavin Newsom in Davos on Tuesday, cut number 11.
I think it's very, very ironic that Governor Newsom, who strikes me as Patrick Bateman meets Sparkle Beach Ken, may be the only Californian who knows less.
Good enough. And then cut number 8.
We've seen the lack of energy security from this manic push for net zero, which I think we've seen in some recent scientific journals has been pushed back. Even Bill Gates is saying 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees. I'm not sure it matters. If you look at what he's doing with his own money, it looks like he believes we're going to innovate our way out of any perceived climate problems. So I think that's on one side. And then again, I think we almost reached a Saturday Night Live moment a few years ago when it was, you're not going to own anything, you're going to eat insects. I mean, it was just the inmates were running the asylum at that point.
You're not into the bugs?
Well, I can tell you, after a few days of Swiss German food, I may switch to bugs. I'm bringing
Brutal.
Continetti, who knew that Scott Bessent was going to be up there with Marco Rubio for verbal dexterity?
Yes, Hugh, as soon as we finished last week's interview where we were talking about some of the great communicators in Donald Trump's cabinet, I slapped my forehead and said, I left out Scott Bessent. And sure enough, he showed why he's one of the more effective communicators in this cabinet. The thing about Bessent is he established a profile in financial markets long before the Trump era began. And like Donald Trump, he was a politically independent character, right? But he has, I think, seen the light through the Biden-Harris years and the Obama years about the dangers of government regulation, high taxes, spending, all of the different energy regulations that limit growth. And so he's become a warrior for markets and for the Trump agenda. And he's entertaining. I mean, that line about Newsom was extremely cutting to the point where I think it left Governor Newsom speechless for a moment, which is a rare occurrence indeed.
It's going to leave a mark. Sparkle Ken is going to leave a mark. Matt Continetti, we've talked about Joseph Epstein before. The soul of wit in written word. How do you know when you have wit? Because obviously Scott Bessent has wit. We got a minute. What is wit?
Yeah, it's quickness. It's the comeback. It's being able to turn a phrase on a dime in response to something somebody has said or something that occurs. Joseph Epstein has it. Scott Bessent has it. Of course, in my view, the founder of American conservatism, William F. Buckley Jr., is the exemplar of wit because he was able to come up with a one-liner really just at the drop of a hat.
It's a superpower. Trump, by the way, recognizes wit, but he doesn't practice it very often. He can get off a good one-liner once in a while, but he recognizes it always. He's a good entertainer. Next, Jack Smith. Matt, last night, Brett Baier is so good at what he does with the panel. He realizes when he has to stretch the moment because smoke is coming out of someone's ears. I had a Democrat on who said Jack Smith did great yesterday and it was wonderful and he showed him up. And then Brett turned to me and said, Hugh, cut number 3.
Hugh, final word.
I think Jack Smith effectively killed the appointment of special prosecutors today. I think Eileen Cannon's decision that she ruled his appointment unconstitutional has been validated. He did not give answers. He gave evasions, and I believe that will go down as one of the worst appearances before a congressional history, other that I can actually remember in real time. So there was a difference of opinion on the panel. What did you think of Jack Smith before the House Judiciary or Oversight Committee?
I think it showed that he was the wrong man for the job. He wasn't prepared for these questions. And they're real questions. I mean, there are questions about his approach to the First Amendment and whether Trump's actions surrounding January 6th are exercises of free speech, which I think there were. He showed lack of judgment on immunity, taking the case all the way to the Supreme Court and losing it. There are questions about the speech and debate clause, which I think Representative Gill really got into when describing the way in which they pursued under Arctic frost the communications of senior congressional leaders, including describing former Speaker Kevin McCarthy as a potential flight risk. Now, there's one thing I know about Kevin McCarthy. He's not a flight risk, right?
No, he's not a flight risk.
And then, you think about Smith's resume and his case against Bob McDonnell, which was then thrown out by the Supreme Court. So you have here a kind of a pattern on the part of Jack Smith. I mean, he is a relentless prosecutor, but I think one who is so determined to indict that he is ready to kind of walk all over the Constitution in the process.
I keep referencing Javert from Les Mis, and I wonder, my question is, did Merrick Garland know that and want that, or did he make a mistake? I know that Eileen Cannon's opinion needs to be revisited by everyone. She held his appointment is unconstitutional because he had never been confirmed as a prosecutor, for example, as a U.S. attorney would be. And the prosecutory power, Robert Jackson wrote a very great essay, gave a great speech, actually, at the Department of Justice to prosecutors about how dangerous it is to be a state prosecutor. You got to be careful. Do you think Garland knew what he was getting or just screwed up?
He must have known. I mean, Merrick Garland has been around Washington, D.C. for a very long time. And he knows about Jack Smith, and he knows about his relationships with Comey and Fitzgerald and that whole crew. So I think he had a sense of what was going to happen, and it backfired. And we know that the primary reason Donald Trump is president today, not just the total collapse of the Biden administration, not just Donald Trump's own extraordinary resilience and talent, but it's because of the lawfare. It's because of the lawfare that was spearheaded by Jack Smith. And so I think this is a moment where we need to look in the mirror. But, Hugh, I was hoping you'd ask me about the Oscar picks. All week you've been asking people about the Oscar nominees. And where's my chance to weigh in?
Well, there are 10 of them. Did you see any of the 10?
No, I've only seen one of the 10, and that's F1, which I did not see in the theater. And I thoroughly enjoyed. So as soon as you said that earlier this week, I said, okay, I'm rooting for F1 to win Picture of the Year.
No, but I want to ask you about the most important question in the world, and it really is. Should Donald Trump hit Iran harder than it's ever been hit, as he pledged to me if they would kill people? And do you think he will?
He needs to take action. He drew a red line there. He has called for new leadership. He has sent this signal of force by sending the aircraft carrier group back into the region. And he's told the Iranian people that help is on the way. So action needs to be taken. They've stepped up sanctions. They've stepped up the maximum pressure. But I do think that a strike directed at kind of the pillars of the regime security state, in particular the Basiji militias and the IRGC, which has caused so much havoc in the region and killed Americans, would be completely justified, and it would back up President Trump's credibility, and it would extend America's deterrence, and it would help the Iranian people who clearly believe that this government is illegitimate and should fall.
Now, this is a question which requires a little bit of prophecy. Barack Obama will never escape erasing the red line. Joe Biden will never escape the collapse in Afghanistan. Donald Trump has already done the world a great thing by just obliterating the nuclear program and by grabbing Maduro. But will walking back from the threat of force here be a lasting mark on his legacy as the historians assess the Trump presidency?
I think Trump's goal should be that there are new governments in Venezuela, Iran, and Cuba by the time he leaves office. And what a blow for freedom it would be if that was the case. He's removed Maduro from Venezuela, and he is working with the regime now, but clearly there will be pressure, as there should be, to transition to democracy in Venezuela. He has made this pledge to the people of Iran. He has done more to weaken Iran in working with, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel than any other American president. And now we have news that he's going to really ramp up the pressure on Cuba, which is, in kind of the final end state, the communist government there. So I think on all three fronts, he should continue the strategy he's been pursuing with the ultimate goal of visiting free capitals in all three nations, either when he leaves office or shortly thereafter.
And 1 minute, Matt. In March of 83, Ronald Reagan gave an SDI speech which was mocked. I mean, really mocked, mercilessly mocked as Star Wars. And Israel had the Iron Dome as a result. Do you think the Greenland gambit for Golden Dome will look 40 years from now like a very smart move or will not be remembered?
No, it will be a smart move. I mean, Greenland's strategic importance is clear. It's obvious to everybody. It's obvious to Russia and China. That's why Trump has made this play for it. Now, I think he rattled a lot of cages when he wouldn't rule out the use of force, and that's why it was important this week that he said he would not use force to take Greenland. But it's certainly the case that America needs to increase our presence there, and we need to build missile defenses in order to protect our nation from nuclear-armed superpowers.
Always good to talk with you, Matt Continetti. Follow him at Continetti. Read him in the Wall Street Journal. On X, it's just at Continetti. And we'll get a latest update from our special envoy from Canada next week. In the next few days, as the winter storm covers the middle of the country and the east and the northeast and the mid-Atlantic, we're going to find out whose cell phone works the best, and I'll bet you Consumer Cellular works as well as any of them because Consumer Cellular uses the same towers, the very same towers. You don't have to sacrifice service for savings, but you get your savings with Consumer Cellular. Call them to compare. 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454, or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Get your phone bill out before you call so you can compare what they're offering you, what kind of data plan, what kind of a rate. Same service as Big Cellular, but make sure you have your phone bill so you can check and see, or just call them and begin phase one. Takes about 20 minutes to switch. And keep your number. It's portable. Keep your data. It's portable. But don't buy a new phone through a cell company. That's a ridiculous move. They always overcharge. Just get down to the cost of the data and the service. If you're over 50 years of age, you definitely should call Consumer Cellular at 1-800-411-4454 because you'll get 2 lines of unlimited data. You and your spouse, you and a friend, you and a partner can get 2 lines of unlimited data for $60 a month. Hard to beat that anywhere if you're an unlimited data person, but you might only need 5 gigs or 10 gigs. Save money with Consumer Cellular. And remember my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, because my special offer, triggered by my name, Hugh, my code word Hugh, gets you your second month free when you make the switch to Consumer Cellular. 1-800-411-4454 or consumercellular.com/Hugh. I am in the Relief Factor studio, and I did go up the implacable hill. In fact, I was listening to Carney, so I went over the hill and down the hill and back up the hill. So I did 5 miles this morning at a rather rapid pace because I was exercising. But I don't feel anything because I take my Relief Factor every day. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, I've got it in my hand. I carry an curcumin, resveratrol, omega. It's very easy to open the packet and very easy to swallow the Relief Factor with a little bit of Arrowhead water. I don't have my Trader Joe's water. I don't have my lukewarm coffee that I used to take in the morning with my Relief Factor, but I take it every day. This is year 13. It's the only supplement I use, the only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years, and it really is effective. So I'm a little bit off because we have a wonderful celebration of life to go to tomorrow, so I can't make it to the beach. But I'm going to get a couple of fibers in today and tomorrow, maybe a 7 tomorrow. I'll have time for that. But it's local, not down at the beach. That means hills. It means the implacable hill. And so a little bit different routine might normally cause some minor aches and pains. It won't for me. So whatever your problem is, your neck, your knees, and you folks are going to be out there shoveling snow, be careful. Don't fall down. Be careful of black ice. Be careful of driving. But if you're going to move snow with a shovel and you haven't done it in about 10 years in some of those places, make sure you get Relief Factor. Call 1-800-4 and the word relief, or simply go to their website and find that starter pack for $19.95, less than $1 a day for 3 weeks at relieffactor.com. Standing by for Ben Domenech of the Big Ben podcast, but the weather is the weather back east, so who knows what's going on. Do want to go over what I had to say on Special Report last night. First, the panel, Brett Baer came to me for my estimate of the Greenland deal, cut number 1.
Hugh, it seems like as we get more details of this, it includes some small pockets of Greenland to build a military base. And as you heard Lucas Tomlinson earlier in the show, the Golden Dome and the prospect of that is a big part of this effort.
I think it's been a breakthrough week, Brett, for getting the understanding of what Golden Dome is and why we need it. I am reminded, and I'm glad Lucas put it in the piece, not just the Gorby-Reagan summit in Reykjavik, where Gorby wanted to kill SDI, but 1983, when President Reagan did an Oval Office speech announcing the Strategic Defense Initiative. He was roundly mocked. There were lots of jokes about Star Wars. But he kept at it. And because he kept at it, Israel was able to turn back, with the help of the United States and allies, via Iron Dome and via interceptors that we had, a fusillade of ballistic missiles from Iran. That's what Golden Dome is about. And the breakthrough this week, the breakthrough Lucas, I think, underscored, is we absolutely have to have Greenland's participation in that. And I think Ruta told you, and he told the president, it's going to happen. That's good news for the world, especially for America. All right, so second round was on the fact that the numbers on the economy are pretty extraordinary. Brett laid them out. 4.4 GDP growth in the fourth quarter. We're looking at maybe 5% in the first quarter. Came around to me again, cut number 2.
That said, Hugh, I mean, you look at the numbers, the growth in the third quarter now at almost 4.5%, projected for the fourth, that was the third quarter, the fourth quarter up to 5.3, according to the Atlanta Fed. And they're looking at over 6% in Q1 for growth. Yeah. With inflation kind of staying where it is.
It's extraordinary. Vice President Vance gave a speech in Toledo today before he went up to Minnesota, and he laid out these numbers. They are extraordinary numbers. The wages are catching up with Biden inflation and are going to pass Biden inflation this year. It's going to be a boom year, and I'm not worried about November until June. By June, the president's got to be focused like a laser. Right now, he's got to be focused on world security. His number one job is to protect the nation. He's doing that very well, and I think he's also bringing peace to the Middle East. Some voters will ignore that. A lot of voters won't. I also got a chance because sometimes you usually get 2 bites at the apple on the panel when there's one segment with the panel. But the third segment, we're running short, and the director's in my ear, and I know I'm probably not going to get a third bite at the apple. But it's about Jack Smith. And I can't remember the name of the nice Democratic consultant who was on that said he did wonderful. And I think my eyes must have rolled back in my head because Brett Baer came back to me and I was able to say this, cut number 3.
Hugh, final word.
I think Jack Smith effectively killed the appointment of special prosecutors today. I think Eileen Cannon's decision that she ruled his appointment unconstitutional has been validated. He did not give answers. He gave evasions, and I believe that will go down as one of the worst appearances before a congressional history, other that I can actually remember in real time.
Strong letter to follow. Okay.
So I'm telling you,
thanks.
It was Adrienne Elrod was who I was on, and she had no facial expression after. I don't think I had to take down Jack Smith. I think anyone who saw it had to take down Jack Smith. She just spun. She's spinning like a top. It was a disaster for him, and everybody knows it. Now, President Trump made some remarks on his way home from Davos on Air Force One about Iran, which I want to make sure you are aware of. Cut number 12.
You know, we have a lot of ships going that direction, just in case. We have a big flotilla going in that direction. And we'll see what happens. We have a big force going toward Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. I saw 837 hangings on Thursday. They would have been dead. Every one of them would have been hung. This is like from 1,000 years ago. This is an ancient culture. Very smart people, by the way, but it's an ancient culture. 837, mostly young men, were going to be hung on Thursday. And I said, if you hang those people, you're going to be hit harder than you've ever been hit. It'll make what we did to your Iran nuclear look like peanuts. And an hour before this horrible thing was going to take place, they canceled it. And they actually said they canceled it. They didn't postpone it. They canceled it. So that was a good sign. But we have an armada. We have a massive fleet heading in that direction, and maybe we won't have to use it. We'll see.
Maybe we won't have to use it. I sure hope that he does, because they're lying to you, Mr. President. They always lie. The Ayatollahs always lie. The IRGC always lies. They're torturing those people behind prison walls. The death toll is hard to pin down. The Europeans think it's 15,000. An American human rights group says they've only been able to verify 5,000 people and other people say as many as 20,000 gunned down, at least 20,000 taken into custody, and it's all quiet there. But the internet's still shut down. President has said in other places that he's going to get solid, firm numbers. Here's my concern. And if you share it with me, you can call me 1-800-520-1234 because I think Ben is snowed in. 1-800-520-1234. If the president does not strike Iran, after what he posted on Truth Social, what he told me on this show, what he told Sean Hannity on Sean's show, what he told Tony DeCopel, I believe the deterrence that he built up by he did obliterate the Iranian nuclear program. His critics try to pretend that it wasn't. That's the most important thing he's done and will do in this term. That's a world historical event. He kept Iran, which is the crazy regime run by fanatics, from getting nuclear weapons. But they are building ballistic missiles by the dozens, and that program has to be disassembled too. And the Israelis will do it by themselves if they have to. But I think, and there are people who disagree with me about this, I think when a non-nuclear power, and it's important, non-nuclear power doesn't include Russia. Russia has committed many atrocities against Ukraine, including the kidnapping of children, the wanton destruction of civilian populations, making war on it's war crimes. But Putin's a nuclear power. So they step up. That's why it was so important to keep Iran from becoming a nuclear power, and why Bill Clinton ought to have kept North Korea from being a nuclear power. He was afraid North Korea would start a conventional war. A conventional war is preferable to having crazy people with nuclear weapons. But Pakistan has them, India has them, Israel has them, the UK has some, France has them. They probably don't know how to use them anymore. But there's a nuclear club, and we don't ever want it to expand. And the president stopped Iran from expanding. So that's his biggest legacy. Returning national pride. All those things are effervescent. Iran not having a nuclear program is a big deal. But I still believe his place in history will have an asterisk next to it for backing down if he backs down with his warning to Iran, which they disregarded. Now, the people in Iran did not go into the streets because Donald Trump said, I'm going to help you. Their internet was gone. They had already been shut down. They might have been hoping President Trump would help them. They might have hoped that help was on the way from a Truth Social post before the internet went down. But his major statements, which were to me and to Sean Hannity and Tony DeCopel, those were made after the internet was turned off. They couldn't have known about that. But the world will. And already I see leftists blaming him for the slaughter. It's not his fault. It's these crazy Ayatollahs that Jimmy Carter allowed to come to power and that Barack Obama gave billions of dollars to, and that Joe Biden continued to deal with and didn't do anything about sanctioning, allowed the sanctions to lapse. Democrats bring nightmares to the world. And they might be nice people. Jimmy Carter's a perfectly nice Sunday school teacher and served his country in the Navy. Apparently a good governor in Georgia. Wholly up over his head when it came to international affairs. I've just been listening to the book King of Kings, and what happened to Shapur Bakhtiar and all the other people that tried to step into the gap after the Shah was obliged to leave by virtue of the People's Rebellion. Jimmy Carter had no idea what was coming in. They thought Ayatollah Khomeini was going to be like John Paul II. They really did. They completely were wrong about Iran. So if the president wants the world to keep aware of American deterrence, he will use that armada. He will use it when they're not looking for it. I mean, he's got a big window. He's got a window probably to St. Patrick's Day, because the Lincoln can't stay out there forever. Lincoln's got to come back. But Israel's had 2 weeks to prepare. Our allies have had a couple of weeks to prepare at the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states. The Lincoln is on station now or will be by tomorrow, and we can begin the retribution for one of the most barbaric episodes in post-Soviet Union history. Not since Mao and Stalin and Pol Pot have we seen anything like that. It was bigger in terms of a massacre by percentage of population than Tiananmen Square. And we don't even know if Tiananmen Square got to 10,000. I think these people, by the end of a couple of weeks from now, will have murdered 50,000 people or imprisoned them and tortured them. It is a ruthless, fanatical, sadistic regime. and they make no bones about it. That's who they are, and they want you to know that. Coming up after the break, Jonathan Williams will be joining me, tax economist on X. But for those of you who are listening to Big Weekend Pod, and for those of you who missed the beginning of the show, Mark Carney got under my skin big time with his speech at Davos for a few reasons. I like Canada. I've said many times, my daughter-in-law is a Canadian who became an American. Her parents are great friends, Canadians, became Americans. Love going to talk to Canada people whenever they're in town. I haven't been to Canada in a while, got nothing against Canada. Don't mind that they had Justin Trudeau. He's kind of a clown, not really good for Canada, but no problem with me. Mark Carney's a different problem. Mark Carney is a globalist. Mark Carney went over and sat down with Xi Jinping. Warm embrace, big handshake. Pronounced we're having an alliance with him. And that was a shudder. The man's a killer. The Uyghurs genocide is a real deal. The crushing of Hong Kong is a real deal. And what Carney did in this speech at Canada was at Davos. Oh, Ben Domenech did come just in time for me to announce Mark Carney. Ben, how are you?
I'm doing well. I apologize. Megan woke up, so she now has the baby.
Oh, that's okay. Young fathers don't have to ever apologize for anything.
No, there was no way. I tried. I could not.
You had better get to the store before the snow comes, because
I have spent approximately $7,000.
Good.
Orders in the last 3 days.
And don't shovel the snow. It doesn't matter. Don't hurt your back. You've got the baby. Ben,
no. I have two different kinds of ice melting salt, so I'm good.
All right. Now, I want to focus on Mark Carney. Did you listen to his speech at Davos?
Not only did I listen to it, I let off with it on the Big Ben Show.
I know.
And I found it refreshingly honest. I don't know what your opinion of it is.
Oh, I hated it, and I think he's cowardly and hypocritical. So, we have a difference of opinion.
No, that's okay. What I also thought, though, is that this is not something that he's going to abide by in any real way. It's not something that he truly hypocritical is a good word for him, because this is something that I think a smart person recognizes, but then he takes the wrong lesson from it. Meaning that I think that this whole admission that we were actually just depending on the Americans all along is honest and is refreshing. I think that the next step, though, of saying, well, because of that, the implication is basically we need to expand the nuclear umbrellas. If you take it to the end game of this, and I think that that's something that is going to be terrible for Europe and for global stability. And you're going to have.
Well, they're not going to do it, though, Ben. This was fact-free. So? This is fact-free posturing. I don't think so, because they've got 42 million people. Their GDP is $2.4 trillion. They're spending a grand total of $82 million over the next 5 years to get to 2%. He said in the course of this speech, I've got submarines, He got 4 submarines. 4.
Yes.
One was built in 2015. The other 3 were built in 2003 and 2000. He's got 68,000 active duty troops, 27,000 reserve. He's not Finland or Poland.
By the way, the funniest thing about the Greenland deployment that I said to a friend of mine, and that friend was Lucas Tomlinson, by the way.
Oh,
I was like, oh, so that's 50% of their force?
Yeah,
they're sending to Greenland.
But what really gets my goat is when he talks about the hegemons, like we're the same thing. All right, he can sell oil to China because we protect freedom of the seas. If there isn't freedom of the seas and China's not buying, he can only sell his oil to us.
But don't you think it's useful to at least have someone get up on that stage who isn't Donald Trump and say, we cannot continue this fiction that we are all living in this system of a rules-based international order, where we are all sort of existing underneath some type of international law and agreement, We're all sort of in the room together, kumbaya.
There are two ways to say it: the way you just said it, or the way. And by the way, the reason we aren't is because China got into the WTO and cheated. They steal intellectual property. They do dumping. They don't care about the environment. They use dirty coal, and they've imprisoned a million Uyghurs.
Is late 90s China policy just like the worst thing?
Yes.
Like the biggest mistake that we made?
And moral equivalence.
And I will say we, because I was totally, I mean.
So was I.
But I was in favor of it, and I thought this was the way to go. Bring them in, have most favored nation status, have trade, have that, be something that increases alliances with the West, and instead it's about exporting their values and not importing ours. And that just,
you're going to read a book to your little boy one day called Willie the Wimp, because every little 4-year-old loves it. Have you seen it? It's a gorilla and a little chimpanzee. And Willie is the wimp, and the chimpanzee is this giant chimpanzee. And the giant chimpanzee takes care of the little monkey. And that's what we are. We're the giant gorilla, and they are the little monkey. And I'm glad that they're a nice little monkey. I like them. But you don't go around with a bunch of bankers. And, he's the only guy that got a standing ovation at Davos. He got a standing ovation.
Look, I think that one of the things that is so funny about Davos is that it's just everything is posturing, and behind the scenes they're all going to the same things together, and they're all. I mean, Gavin Newsom met with Donald Trump apparently. It's one of these things where it's just so deeply corrupt. And one of the things that I do appreciate about this particular moment as it relates to the Greenland situation is that the president's approach to foreign policy, I think, has been vindicated so many times that now he thinks he can just he can hit that number on roulette every single time. I can get it every single time, and I'm not sure he's going to get it every single time.
I followed Lucas on Special Report last night. He's on Greenland. And I think we had a breakthrough this week because now everyone agrees Greenland is necessary for Golden Dome, and it's just the details. That's the breakthrough.
It's just the details. And the breakthrough, too, is that as I have argued, as my friend Josh Ruffino has argued in multiple essays, including the Wall Street Journal, there is a sovereignty solution here that is right in front of you. And it just, basically requires that type of movement in our direction. It does not require an invasion. It does not require us to spend an enormous amount of money buying it, but it requires America to have a sovereign footprint there that is in our security interest, both long-term and right now. And I think that that's something that everyone has come around to because it's just impossible to deny.
Yeah,
and that's something that, again, to your point, Trump sort of forces people into admitting the truth that they don't want to.
Unless they can go to a place and posture like Carney did. I'm going to come right back with Ben during the break because we got to talk about the Big Ben podcast this week and about his expert from UVA on cell phones. If you haven't listened to it, Big Ben podcast on the Fox Podcast Network. He's editor-at-large at The Spectator. His Substack is The Transom. But this is a great podcast with Tricia McLaughlin, basically doing what J.D. Vance did in Minneapolis yesterday, but the expert from the University of Virginia, I'll talk with him. And if he can stick around after the break, we'll kick around Jack Smith some more. Ben, I listened to the Big Ben podcast today, and it was fabulous. I like Tricia McLaughlin, but I basically did J.D.'s speech yesterday. So I want to focus on your UVA professor and his guidance on phones, because just simply dumb phones till high school and no phones in the bedroom, that's all parents need to know, isn't it?
I think this thing is really a lot more simple than people seem to be making it. Like there's been, this whole public conversation around it, the work that Jonathan Haidt has done and everyone else who's kind of, I don't know, they've developed a whole conversation within the space. I think it's that simple, isn't it, Hugh? I mean, and I realize I may sound like completely out of touch on this. Or as if I'm some, throwback stoic. But, the question that I really have for him is, why can't you just delete the apps? Why can't you just get rid of them?
Well, he went further when he said no cell phones at night in the bedroom because they lose sleep. And, of course, the boys are looking for body pictures. And number two, in school, computers are overrated, that we learn by doing things. And I said, hallelujah.
So that point is actually the more critical point from my perspective. So first off, the no phones in the room, to me, that's the same as no TVs in the room.
Yes.
Like you shouldn't be allowing that. I mean, come on, it's a distraction. It's bad. It's bad for you, by the way, as an adult too. It's not just bad as. So, but I actually think that TV should be, you should have a central location or whatever for it, but it should be something that you intentionally do. It should not be constant background or noise or what have you. But when it comes to the school part of this, Hugh, we are in constant fights about this. And I will say this as someone who sends, my kids to some pretty top flight expensive schools. No offense to any listener, but I think they're a little too pricey because I was homeschooled all the way. But anyway, the point is, that is a point of contention among everyone. It's not just the public schoolers; it's the private schoolers too. And the schools are constantly pushing you to do more screens. To say oh no, just this snowstorm, coming up, here, the school sends out something about, be sure to, have your kid take the iPad home, and we need to be able to zoom in for class. And it's no, we're not going to do that.
We're not going to do that.
Yeah, we're just not going to do that because that's not the way that people learn.
What I was glad to hear you say is that it's become a source of opprobrium if you are in a restaurant and you give the kid the phone. Because I cast a glance like that, 30-second span. How often do you get that look?
For me, I have, quite honestly, I have never opened my phone and shown my kids a video in a restaurant. Never. I will say that I've been at tables where other people have done that, and my kids have watched, and I have not objected. But I have never done that with my phone, and I don't ever intend to because I think that is an admission of failure.
Yeah, but I do believe that they are permissible on long car rides and airplane flights.
That's fine. Long car rides and airplanes, I mean, it's the same thing that everybody else is doing, so I don't have a problem with that. You can bring a certain amount of games and entertainment, but eventually they're going to move from the Play-Doh to just needing to watch other things.
Coming back with Ben on Jack Smith. Ben, I want to give you 4 uninterrupted moments for your comments on Jack Smith and what we take away from this, because I've already said my piece 3 or 4 times.
Well, first off, I'll just say I'm not sure that I have seen a person who has occupied a role as important as Jack Smith be in a position in front of a congressional hearing where he was where anyone that I know of was more dismissive, disrespectful, and, quite frankly, full of hubris about everything that he did in his role ever in front of the Congress. And keep in mind, we've seen Anthony Fauci testify.
We've seen Ollie North.
Ollie North. This is quite, as a sort of, 1-1 to achieve. And so I think that Jack Smith, came in and did himself no favors because there was no humility on his part, especially when it came to the issues related to grabbing the phone records of members of Congress and the records of all these different citizens across the country. I hope that you have seen, maybe you played it, the audio of Chip Roy talking to him about this. But the idea that you could just seize and go after all of these things years after the fact, by the way, and not inform members of Congress that you're just going to be snarfing up their phone records, that's obscene. You can't.
Yeah,
do
Justice
that.
Jackson, when he was Attorney General, gave a very famous speech about the power of the prosecutor and why you've got to be very careful. He went rogue. He went Javert. And I think Eileen Cannon's ruling that his appointment was unconstitutional bears up very well because he had never. You can appoint a U.S. attorney to be a special counsel, and that's fine. They've got the right temperament, the right judgment. They've passed through Senate confirmation. This guy is a fanatic, and therefore
it's obscene. I mean, you say when Javert had the honor to jump off the bridge.
Yeah.
So it's like
I don't want him to do that. I just want him to go away.
I don't want him to do that either. Just to be clear.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying there was a moment of clarity for him. This is a guy who just really thinks that he did everything right. That he just that was one of Chip's questions to him. And it was just, there's just, and Kevin Kiley asked it in a slightly different way, but it's one of these things where you you come in front of Congress after something as botched as this, and you don't at least have the humility to admit maybe we overreached in certain areas, maybe we should have done some things differently. We were trying to do this in a responsible way, and instead we gave a reflection of it as a partisan investigation. There was none of that.
So the key question is, did Merrick Garland get what he wanted, or did he just get punked by someone making a recommendation?
That is a big question. I don't know the answer to it. I would incline more toward the latter, but that's only because I think Garland is not particularly bright.
Because he's kind of hapless, right?
Yeah. That is my impression of him, based on limited interaction. But I think that is not. I think he got jobbed in this.
All right. Last question: of the 10 movies nominated for Best Picture, how many of them have you seen?
I've seen about half of them.
Oh, you're the outlier. You're the sixth person I've asked.
Hugh, I saw 27 movies last year, and of them, 9 were kids' movies. Okay. And the best movie that I saw last year in theaters was F1, which everyone.
That's the only other one that anyone's seen, and I agree. It was great. But you actually saw Sinner?
Yes. No. I mean, I liked it. It was good.
You're the only one.
It's not
okay,
a great
Ben.
Movie.
We're not going to you for movie recommendations anytime soon.
Well, look. I will tell you the movie that I saw that I enjoyed the most last year was Weapons, and I also really liked Eddington, which everyone hated. But everyone but me and John Podorz.
At least you've seen them, though. At least you've seen Ben.
I think it's good to go back to movies.
B. Dominich, thank you, my friend. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I want to remind you, I take it every day. I took it today when I went up the Implacable Hill, my 5 miles today, listening to Mark Carney. I went faster than normal because Mark Carney got me going. But Relief Factor means I won't feel it in the morning. I won't feel it tomorrow during a memorial service. I'll be fine on Sunday when I go to see a friend. Relief Factor really works. It costs $19.95. I'm in the Relief Factor studio for a reason. I've got one out west. I've got one in the Beltway. I've got one up north because I take Relief Factor every day because I believe in the product, not because they put up the studios. I carry curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. Take it every day. Call 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief. $19.95 for a 3-week starter pack. That's less than $1 a day. 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, or go to their website. Find that starter pack there as well at relieffactor.com. Relieffactor.com. Jonathan Williams is the Chief Executive Officer of the American Legislative Exchange Council. He's also a great economist. He puts together the Rich States, Poor States book every year, richstatespoorstates.com. And I got to tell you right now, I got the longer segment for John because we've got to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that means state taxes. John, first, Happy New Year to Jonathan Williams.
Well, likewise, my friend. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you, and I hope you've got your snow shovel out. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah. DC, they freak out here with about an inch of snow, so this is going to be real this weekend, it's looking like.
Now, it's unfortunate that we've got a new governor, and Abigail Spanberger as well, and I want to go right to the fact, the first story I read about her, the very first story, is that there's a bill to put a death tax in Virginia. Hasn't everyone learned that people leave your state when you put a death tax in place?
Well, you would think. I mean, this is pretty common sense stuff, Hugh. I mean, we've had states all across the country looking at ways to get rid of their death taxes, even in places like New Jersey when Chris Christie was governor. As part of his deal, he struck with the Democrat legislature. They began to repeal some of their death tax that's on the book. So if even New Jersey is looking to repeal part of their death tax, it's really a head scratcher that you have the left-wing Democrats now in charge in Richmond looking to put one into place. And that's not it, as you probably saw in their long laundry list of tax increases and bad ideas, such as repealing right to work. And you can go down the line. I mean, but this is pretty concerning. You and I watched that race very closely with Winston Sears and Abigail Spanberger. And Abigail Spanberger ran, all of her ads anyways, came across as a moderate Democrat, that I'm going to do the sensible thing. I'm a common sense person. And here we are. We'll see how long that lasts. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be long.
Turns out Mamdani in a dress. Let's talk about the taxes. There are a lot of states that are going to go off the good tax pass, and there are a lot that are going to do good things. Let's run through them. What else do they want to raise taxes on besides people dying in Virginia?
Well, I mean, you name it, right? I mean, it's the old Reagan line. If it moves, tax. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. That's unfortunately what we're going to see in Virginia this session. And that's high income earners tax. I mean, they're looking to rival California with high income earner taxes. And so whether that's it's hotel taxes, it's taxes on private clubs, you get on the list and it is literally any idea you have on tax policy, on raising taxes, they're probably going to pursue it this year in Richmond.
Now, I saw taxes on firearms. Now, I think if that's a standalone bill, it's going to be unconstitutional. Is it a standalone bill or is it a general sales tax?
Well, I think I've seen it as a standalone, but I think it's very possible it gets looped together and as part of a budget as well. And there's lots of ways that this can emerge as we go during session here. But what's really interesting here, Hugh, is that if I'm in North Carolina right now, or if I'm in Tennessee on the other side of the Bristol line, and if I'm in West Virginia, I mean, this is economic development opportunity 101 to attract Virginia businesses. And it's as painful as it is as a Virginia resident to say that. These are huge opportunities for those states to continue to make gains. Their states are already way ahead of Virginia in many cases in our rich states, poor states index. And, this is a dynamic, competitive environment. And we're going to see what those states do to respond to it. Governor Patrick Morrisey, for instance, one of our great friends in West Virginia, is already proposing his State of the State address, cutting income taxes across the board once again in that state. So, I mean, this is, game on, I think, in terms of the Mid-Atlantic region.
And capital and people are mobile. I will not live in a state with a death tax. I just won't. That's taxing your wealth twice. It's been taxed before at least once. I will not do it a second. I'll just leave. And I think other people will. Washington, like Virginia, want to do a millionaire's tax. Don't they realize that people can move? I mean, not some, but many.
Well, the irony there in Washington state is they've been the recipient of so many people coming to Washington because they had been a no income tax state forever, Hugh. And all the refugees, the tax refugees escaping places like California and other high tax states and going to Washington to take advantage of the fact that they were a no income tax state. As you know, we've talked about their state Supreme Court invented the right in their Constitution to have a capital gains income tax and claimed it wasn't an income tax. And here we are, many of us warned that would be the camel's nose under the tent and then be proposing other broad-based income taxes. And here we go under Governor Ferguson in the legislature proposing a millionaire's tax. So unfortunately, there's some really bad ideas out there right now, Hugh.
But it's not all bad news. You sent me good news as well. That will show up in richstatespoorstates.com come April 1. But let's talk about who's doing the right thing. South Carolina, by the way. Sounds like a nice place to move to.
Well, they've been getting a lot of residents already, and the legislature has just put forward a great plan to reduce income taxes. They've obviously had to compete with North Carolina, that's been doing very good things for years. Tennessee, a no-income tax state. Florida, a no-income tax state. Georgia's been cutting taxes, and so they're looking at ways to get down to a 1.99% income tax. So incredible progress there from a state that has not cut taxes as aggressively in recent years. But another one that I wanted to mention, Hugh, I just got back from Jefferson City, Missouri yesterday, where I was on the ground with our Missouri legislators, our ALEC delegation. And I have to give a hat tip to Governor Mike Kehoe, who has put it in his State of the State address just recently. But he has a bold plan to completely repeal the Missouri income tax. Seeing all this movement around him and seeing that region with Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas and Kim Reynolds in Iowa and so many great movers, he realized that Missouri is quickly being left behind. They're tired of being middle of the pack, and he's got an ambitious plan to go and repeal the personal income tax in Missouri. So kudos to Governor Kehoe for really being a leader on that this session.
And ALEC keeps a great close eye. The American Legislative Exchange Council, alec.org/U, keeps an eye on the U-Haul Growth Index. Inbound states, U-Haul's headed there. Number 1, Texas. Number 2, Florida. Number 3, North Carolina. Number 4, Tennessee. Outbound states, California, Illinois, New Jersey, and New York. You'd think they would learn, Jonathan. And what about, we got like 45 seconds, the Index of State Education report, which you released this week?
Well, brand new. Education freedom and economic freedom go hand in hand. The Sunshine State, the free state of Florida, #1 once again this year in our index. Arizona #2, Arkansas #3. Incredible progress for the Lone Star State, the biggest gainer this year after their major school choice expansion that we've talked about. $1 billion going to families and kids across the state of Texas. So lots of great stories there at alec.org.
I don't see Ohio on this list, Jonathan. Are you doing your Michigan thing? Are you? Because I don't think we'll follow up. Jonathan Williams, CEO of ALEC, ALEC.org. Thank you, friend. Time for Tarzana Joe, the poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Hugh. You know, it's the week of the first anniversary of the second Trump term. I wasn't a math major, clearly, but I don't think any issue summarizes the Trump presidency as well as this one. It's cold and vast and desolate, a frigid and a mean land, but Eric was a realtor and therefore called it Greenland. The folks he brought in summer, they found themselves in Iceland, at least by most comparisons to what they left in Iceland. Was it lower interest rates or mead that they were all drinking? They came there by the thousands because of wishful thinking, establishing 2 settlements at Qorkatuck and Nuuk, inviting other Norsemen to come and have a look. Now, some may call it marketing, and some may call it theft. The horns froze off their helmets, and they all up and left. Dutch colonists came later, and those guys are the worst. The Dorset, Thule, and Sakaka. Those cultures were there first. Now, what was once a wilderness, with hardly trail or byway, finds itself the center of a hypersonic highway. And if this global warming is as bad as they report, think of all that coastline and what a grand resort. Now, somewhere there's a diplomat to get this to win-win, to make for Don the Orange the biggest deal that's ever been. That's Eric the Red meets Donald the Orange by Tarzana Joe.
William of Orange has been displaced. William of Orange, of course, took over the United Kingdom. So you never know where President Donald Trump is going to go next, Joe.
It will be a glorious revolution indeed.
Yeah, in fact, he might go take all of Denmark. Tarzana Joe, thank you for that glorious poem, which will be over at tarzanajoe.com. Has the button been repaired, Joe? Is it working?
Yes, my button is fixed. Fix the button, push the button, get a poem. I want a poem.
To get a poem, all you need, get the Greenland poem. It will be posted at tarzanajoe.com. But for all your poetry needs, all you have to do is go to tarzanajoe.com, and there is a button that says, I need a poem. Hit it, fill in the form. Joe's rates are reasonable, and he has been here year in and year out for the better part of 25 years. Thank you, Joe. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm coming back with the Hillsdale Dialogue. All things Hillsdale can be found at hillsdale.edu. We are back into World War II memoirs with Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. But in the meantime, during the break, as we tee up Dr. Arnn, I'd encourage you to head over to hillsdale.edu, look at all the courses that are there online, and especially if you're the parent of a rising senior, you're going to want to go there and get the application sent off to you immediately. There are a few places to go to college in the country, but very, very few that guarantee the education you'll receive and what they call the network benefits. That used to be attributed to the Ivy Leagues that are no more. Well, they now reside at Hillsdale College.